The only way I can describe today's badge cam is mind-boggling. Hi everyone, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host, John Correa.
And I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video coming to us from a 48th precinct of the New York City Police Department.
New Bold Targets is now Throom. I use Throom targets on the range for all the benefits of steel with none of the drawbacks. They're made in the USA too. Pick up a set to make your shooting more fun and effective.
Dispatch has received calls that this guy that's sitting down here is carrying a gun and showing it to people. So you're gonna see two officers show up to, shake this guy down a little bit, which in New York still a kind of stop and frisk policy. And the officer shows up to kind of grab a hold of him. Dude pulls a gun on the officer and shoots the officer once in the leg. His partner shoots him as well in the vest right there. I'm almost positive she shot him in the vest. And then he goes off camera, and the officer ends up getting the perp into custody as well. We have this on badge cam from both officers, but let's watch the badge cam and listen in on what happens.
Hey.
641. 641.
Take your hands out of your pocket. Take your hands out. 85!
Call a bus.
Call a bus! Ooh, can't hear anything.
Call a bus. Call a bus. I'm shot.
I'm shot too.
I'm shot.
I'm shot.
I'm shot. Call a bus.
I need a bus!
Is that a 2405 you lost?
Let me see your
My
hand.
arm. Show your hands! Oh, my arm. Where are you shot?
What's your location?
Where are you shot?
Our perp got off multiple shots at the officers. He hit both of them. He hit the male officer, I think, in the leg. He hit the female officer in her arm. I'm pretty sure it was her who hit him in the vest, though that is a little speculative, but I'll show you why I think so in a minute. The perp is facing attempted murder of police officer charges in this one. Did we just watch that?
Yeah, you said mind-blowing. I think shambolic's probably a better word. There's a lot to talk about here. If you're a cover officer, this is a lesson on what not to do.
So Mike, I'm gonna say from the giddy up, this guy is no Boy Scout, okay? He is definitely a dirtbag, felon in possession, multiple charges, those things. That said, in a post-Bruin world, a dude that's just sitting on the steps there carrying a gun, in a post-Bruin world, that shouldn't be a problem. But okay, so the cops end up finding a dirtbag here, though I think we should live in a world that somebody who's just peacefully carrying a firearm shouldn't be messed with. At the same time, I wonder if this guy wasn't just showing the people the gun as an intimidation tool. So, it's just a mess.
I think the test here, John, is, well, let me start over. Part of what we don't know is what we don't know, right? We don't know what the reporting party said, how they saw the gun. He did produce it, looks like out of a pocket or from under some clothing, so it appears to have been concealed. So how did someone know he was sitting there with a gun if he hadn't brandished it or done something silly with it? I find it unlikely, and the fact that he was so quick to start shooting at the cops tells me you're right, he wasn't a Boy Scout. So there was a decent, reason for suspicion here. I frankly don't know the legality of if that's his home, he's on his curtilage. Do they have the right to open that fence and come in? There's a lot of legal issues here at play, and the answer is I'm not 100% sure. But this guy was clearly there with some malintent, so I think we can start from there. And then I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that these two officers are on a foot beat or they parked their car on the street, whatever. They did not discuss this on their way up there. They had time. I'm not faulting them for this, but if you're watching this as an officer in training, understand if you're going to a man with a gun call, no matter what it is, whether he's shooting it in a shopping mall, whether he's shooting it off in his yard, which is potentially illegal, or somebody sitting on a stoop, have a conversation with your partner about how you're going to approach this before you get there, assuming you have time. And I think they had a minute to discuss this. It wasn't like he was actively shooting at anyone. And because it looks like he had already made up his mind to go in and go hard and try to control the gun, and she wasn't on that same sheet of music, and we see what happened as a result.
Yeah, and of course, listen, if you're a private citizen here, and even if the cops are the jackbooted thugs who are, violating your rights and those things, don't pull a gun on cops, okay? You're gonna end up in jail for a heck of a long time. Turn their badge cams on, let your lawyers fight them in court, because otherwise this is bad stuff that happens. Again, this guy's a felon, all right? And I don't think he's doing good stuff here at all. But again, right now, he's not pulling a gun. I don't see a gun. I think that this is maybe one of those times, Mike, that we ought to slow our roll a little bit. Rather than try to close the distance here, beat this guy up, take him into custody, get him into cuffs, maybe just a little contact. Hey, man, you doing okay? We had reports that somebody was, that had a gun on him. And so, I just want to check in with you, see how you're doing, and take the temperature first rather than rush in and end up in a gunfight.
Yeah, I'm not sure the male officer, the male half, I'm not sure what his experience is. If he's been through this before and is like, I'm not going to get shot at again or let this guy get the drop on me. I'm not sure why he moved in so quickly. And again, I don't know the New York laws well enough to know if this is allowable under the Fourth Amendment for him to come on here. I don't know if this guy lives there, if he's visiting. There's a ton of things that we're not going to address in this video. We're mainly talking about tactics. But if you're that private citizen, please listen to what John said. Fighting it out with the cops, it may seem like, some romantic ideal that you have in your head that, well, this is wrong, they're violating my rights, so I'm going to fight with them. Listen, you have the conversation with your God, do whatever you want, but I'm telling you it's a bad idea, because even if the cops are found to have been wrong, you're still going to prison regardless. As we saw in another video we did recently, an officer had some kind of iffy probable cause for a stop, and the young man in the stop sort of fought back and shot the cop shot him dead. So I understand principles and standing on your principles, but at the end of the day, if you're on a slab as a result of exercising your principles over something like this, I just don't see the value in it. I would rather him just cooperate and get this sorted out one way or another. Turns out he's a felon in possession, he's a prohibited possessor, so none of that really applies here, but I wanted to make that point.
And recognize here, now once the fight's starting, let's start talking about the fight itself, right? Guy pulls a gun and pulls it away from the officer. That's what you should expect him to do. When we talk about disarms here, when we talk about control, first thing you got to do is control the distance. And if you don't go get to that right hand, he is going to use a leveraging arm. And you better know how to break him down to get to that gun, to get to the hand with the gun, the arm with the gun. The officer has a very hard time with that here. And you've got to plan that in advance. And I get it. It was a bad spot here, which is another reason to slow your roll, to see if you can get into a position of advantage rather than the significant position of disadvantage that this officer started a disarm attempt at. Now, Mike, the one that I really want to talk about here is the female officer's getting her gun out in the fight because the dude is pulling a gun. I agree with that here, but she is in a place now where her fellow officer is in the way. And as we're going to watch them move, when her shot breaks, I want to see what that angle is, because she's trying to figure out, oh, the guy has shot at us here. And so now, if you look at the angle of her firearm when that shot breaks, I'm pretty sure she shot her partner here, Mike.
I try to avoid being too harsh on officers who are in these sort of very dynamic situations, but I'm not going to have any such reservation here with this video, John. This is atrocious, in my opinion. To just sort of, not blindly, but kind of blindly fire into a mass of humanity, and part of that mass is your partner, is unacceptable. If you don't have a shot, on the bad guy where you're relatively certain you're not going to hit your partner, you don't take the shot. Either move in closer, or initially before they started wrestling, I would have loved to have seen her stay over towards the back end of that burgundy Lexus or whatever it is in the background there, and have an angle on him that she doesn't have now because she was right behind her partner. There's a lot of things he could have done differently, that she could have done differently. Maybe if he doesn't press it so quickly, the guy doesn't draw the gun, I don't know. But this shot right here is pretty ill-advised, and the follow-up shots are almost equally ill-advised. It was pretty hard to watch this, to be honest with you, John.
Yeah, and listen, I just want to say, you're responsible for every shot you fire, and if you put one in your partner, they haven't released that publicly yet. I don't know if they will, but that sure looks like her shot went in the guy, and again, now she's taking another shot that she's not aiming, though that gun is below her line of sight. Her partner is dead in the way of that guy. It wouldn't have surprised me if the second shot that hit him came from his partner. And this level of incompetence, and I don't want to be too hard on the officer here, okay? I get it, it's a stressful situation. Generally speaking, I'm pro law enforcement, but this is, to use a phrase from my friend Mike Williver, just a shambolic display of bad decision making with a gun in your hand.
Yeah, I borrowed that from Jeremy Clarkson of Top Gear fame, for the record. I can't take credit for that one. So here's the deal. This looks to me, we talk all the time, John, you and I talk offline and online about having had that conversation with yourself, whether you're a private defender going to carry a gun, or even just pepper spray or whatever tool to protect yourself, especially if you're in law enforcement, if you're in the military, if you're in a position to potentially take someone else's life. You need to have thought through scenarios. You need to have thought to yourself, am I really prepared for this? Am I going to, part of that is not just, can I pull the trigger? Obviously she can pull the trigger. The other question is, can I remain calm? That superpower of calm that we always talk about, this is not demonstrating calm. She was not the one wrestling with this guy. She didn't appear to make any real quality, intelligent attempt to get a better angle before she shot. So if I say this a lot, but I'll repeat it one more time. If you're an officer, if you're a deputy, if you're an agent, if you're someone out there in one of these lines of work, and you already know you're terrified to draw your gun or use your gun, you already know that you're afraid to walk up to a 6'2", 280-pound parolee and handle your business and do what you got to do, I urge you to seek another line of work, because I've worked with cops like that, and it's unnerving. If you're not feeling confident in your ability to handle yourself physically, whether it's with a gun or not, whether it's grappling or arrest techniques or handcuffing or whatever, if you're afraid to do your job, do everyone a favor, do your community a favor, do your department a favor, and consider resigning. There's no shame in it. Go do something else. Go work for the crime lab, or go do some other job related to law enforcement where you're not on the front line, facing down bad guys with and without guns. I urge you to consider getting a different job, and I'm not kidding.
Yeah, and I really think that we shouldn't be kidding of that in this particular case. Now, I also want to notice here that the officer then gets on her, radio and takes her primary hand off that she shot in, by the way, to get on the radio. Once again, I cannot tell you enough. Nobody is coming to save you. The radio is not going to help in the moment. You have to win the fight. Now, do you want other help coming? Yes, but you're literally in the middle of a gunfight. Really, all you're doing in that moment is writing in your diary. Dear diary, I'm hurt. My partner's hurt. I'm scared. Things are bad. You got to win the fight first. Then, in a calm demeanor, again, those 5 things you want to say, right? Who you're talking to, who you are, where you are, what you need, and then shut up. We do those 5 things on the radio. And again, taking your hand off the gun in order to key your radio so that you leave it in your support hand with a guy that you may still need to shoot again is... I can't even think about how bad that technique is, Mike.
Yeah, and let's talk about mindset. I think a lot of times police get complacent. It happens. I'd had complacent periods in my career where I found myself kind of slipping and not having that sort of edge that I should have had. I like to think I always caught myself in the process. But part of your mindset is, yeah, this is a guy with a gun call, and yeah, I've been to 100 of these, and yeah, every time either they didn't have a gun or they ran and tried to dump the gun. They're not going to try to shoot the police. That's crazy. Don't you know how crazy that is? You met the one guy here who doesn't know how crazy that is, who thought he was going to somehow get away with shooting the cops and getting away. And so I don't know what's going on in her mind, but it's possible that she wasn't considering the possibility this was to turn into a shooting. The way she sort of just kind of casually walked up behind the other officer, going back to them maybe needing to have a conversation before they arrive on the scene to discuss what they're planning on doing. But her mindset didn't seem to be present in the moment. Like, okay, this is a guy with a gun call. I need to be focused. I need to be thinking about my positioning. I need to be thinking about my angle, my line of fire. If God forbid this guy pulls a gun out. None of those things seem to be happening in that moment. Just my perception, John.
And listen, what are things that we talk about? This is something we brought over from the piloting world, okay? Is staying ahead of the problem. One of the things that we learn when we fly general aviation is to stay ahead of the problem. And if you're not ahead of the problem gets ahead of you in a hurry. And the next thing you know, what you're looking at right here is what you're looking at is him firing back your way. So she got a shot off into her partner, then that guy fires at her and puts a bullet through her arm, all right? And when we talk about getting ahead of the problem, when you're exactly what you talked about, Mike, when you're like, okay, this is a man with a gun call. I need to have my fundamentals of marksmanship correct, because if this guy pulls a gun on us, I need to get that gun out and grip, sights, and trigger. Because if I'm not ahead of this problem, the problem will get ahead of me. And the farther behind the problem I get, the more I am reacting instead of responding. And then again, I get hit. Officers and private citizens alike, you need to have the emotional fitness to stay present in the moment, not thinking, oh no, I've been shot, but thinking, okay, am I okay? I'm still have a problem in front of me. What can I do to make this problem better and end this threat?
You don't even have a millisecond, John, to acknowledge the fact that you've been shot and say, well, that sucks. Let me continue doing what I'm doing. That needs to be the last thing on your mind in the middle of the fight. I know it's easy for me to say, sitting here in my comfy active self-protection palatial podcast, World Takeover Studios. But the fact is, you're shot. Okay, we can't even think about that now. We can't deal with that now. We're still in the middle of a gunfight, and we have to finish the gunfight. not the way she finished the gunfight, but we need to stay in the fight and figure out a way to stop this threat. And then once the threat is neutralized, then we can worry about our wounds and our extra holes that we have now and dealing with those and applying trauma gear and all that sort of thing. The moment you're shot, understand that it's not Hollywood, it's not TV, it's not Grand Theft Auto. You don't get shot and fall down and die necessarily. In fact, most gunshots are entirely survivable. The bullet has to hit a specific part of the body to kill you right away. So if you're still holding a gun and you're still seeing and breathing and hearing, you need to stay in the fight and end it. But again, I want to reiterate, not the way we saw this particular gunfight ended. It was not great.
Yeah, now finally, of course, follow-up actions, right? Tap ifs. Threat down. Do I need to get him again? Is he in custody? I need to get this guy in custody right now. Did he bring any accomplices to the fight? P, is my partner okay? The answer here is no. You need to get that vest off your partner right now, start assessing his injuries and using emergency medical aid on him. And if you don't have your first aid kit on your person, I'm not talking about back in your car, I'm talking about on your person to help your partner here, you are going to be a part of the problem, not the solution. Then injuries, what's going on with you? And you're hurt, okay, I need to have medical with me. Then firearm, correct follow-up actions, and seek help, then finally call it in. Do that medical stuff first. Officers, you need your medical on your person. It needs to be staged correctly. You need to know how to use it, and you need to get that vest off your brother officer and start assessing his wounds, getting some, like a chest seal on, and getting him to bright lights and cold steel as fast as humanly possible. This is, again, in the words now of Jeremy Clarkson, a shambolic display of really bad marksmanship, really bad decision-making, poor prior planning, which ended up in a very poor performance. Let's do better from here so that we can actually cover our asp.